I'm the Space Quest historian. Just a quick little update to my video about the absurd timer glitches in the Space Quest 1 remake. Running the game in DOSBox with the cycles set way too high produces some interesting and pretty funny glitches, but DOSBox can only emulate fast machines up to a certain point. But going through this cavalcade of game-breaking glitches spurred on the digital sadism crowd on my SQH Discord to answer a simple but intriguing question. What's the fastest way you could possibly run this game? And by fastest, we mean running the game on the fastest machine that can legitimately run Space Quest 1. Emulating the game via DOSBox produces some fairly insane speeds, as we've seen, but the fastest DOSBox can run the game would be roughly equivalent to a souped-up Pentium 1 machine, which is evidently way faster than what the game is expecting, but what if it was possible to run the game even faster using original hardware? Fortuitously, a couple of denizens on my SQH Discord had some of these lying around. The footage you see in this video were captured by PickleDog on a 1.26 GHz Pentium 3, which was a pretty standard machine for the early 2000s, so it's about 10 years younger than the game we're trying to run here, and EpicPotatoFiend, who ran the game on a 3 GHz Pentium 4. And running the game on these machines produced some, well, fairly predictable results, but they're also fucking hilarious. So let's take a look, shall we? The first thing you'll notice when starting the game is that the Arcada is shaking constantly. The shakes are meant to occur intermittently, but the timer that's supposed to space them out reaches zero almost instantly, causing the screen to freak out like it's having a seizure. You'll also notice that Roger is shaking his head like he's being electrocuted. It's a little easier to make out later in the game when the screen isn't bouncing all over the place. Roger's head is actually a separate sprite from the rest of his body, and this sprite is told to play a head-turning animation every once in a while. Now that once in a while timer is, of course, completely borked when running the game this fast, and the end result is, well, this. Also, his walking speed is, of course, very much affected as well. I already covered the intricacies of Roger's movement speed in my previous video, but long story short, if you crank the speed slider in the game setting, Roger will zip across the screen as fast as your CPU will allow. Doing this in DOSBox already produces some insanely fast results, but on a Pentium 3, he just straight up fucking teleports across the screen. And while this makes avoiding the Sarian patrols on the Arcada a breeze, it won't do you much good when you reach the Coronian Desert, because as I mentioned in my previous video, the timer that controls when Roger dies of thirst is tied to CPU speed, and on a Pentium 3, this happens instantaneously. You're supposed to get 2 warnings before Roger keels over and dies, but here you don't even get a chance to breathe before it happens. The acid drops in the underground caverns have also turned into a fucking monsoon, so getting past them is also pretty much impossible. The skimmer sequence is also affected by Roger's inhuman movement speed, but what I didn't mention in the previous video is that the duration of the sequence itself isn't determined by how many rocks you clear, but is instead also controlled by a timer. And that timer, of course, is also tied to CPU speed, so the sequence is over almost immediately after it starts. I swear, I didn't edit this footage at all. Once you get to the Deltor at the end of the game, things take such a turn for the bizarre that it becomes almost surreal. The Sarians will, of course, shoot any intruder on sight, and Roger is meant to don a Sarian uniform to disguise himself so he can walk around the ship undetected. This doesn't matter in the slightest when playing at this speed though, because you can just speed past the Sarians. Even though they manage to get a few shots in at you, they're hard-coded to always miss their first shot so the player would have time to fish out the pulse ray from their inventory and click it on the guard. And because of this built-in grace of the Sarians always missing their first shot, Roger has already zoomed way past them before they have a chance to fire off a second round. In fact, this can bug out the game something fierce. In the course of a normal playthrough, Roger finds a disguise but later loses his helmet, which of course alerts any nearby Sarians. But when playing at Pentium 3 speeds, you can easily make it all the way to the star generator without bothering with the disguise at all, and the game then thinks you made it to the star generator while wearing your disguise but without a helmet. Death awaits, sure, but this shit just looks fucking hilarious. Anyway, that's pretty much it. The game was already nearly unplayable in DOSBox unless you throttle the CPU cycles to that of a marginally advanced toaster oven, but this shit is just absurd. So, a massive thanks once again to PickleDog and EpicPotatoFiend for diving into this madness experiment and capturing the footage you've seen in this video. And I also want to give a big ass shout out to Hotspot, or however you pronounce that, one of the OG co-developers of DOSBox, who also hangs out in the Discord, and gave us a good rundown of how DOSBox handles stuff like max cycles and what the maximum speed of the emulator is. Long story short is, you won't see this kind of warp speed fist fucking we've put Space Quest 1 through in this video because DOSBox just doesn't really work that way. And that's no slight against DOSBox. And DOSBox is a magnificent emulator. And it was never about emulating a perfect DOS environment to begin with. I mean, its purpose was just to get old DOS games running. As Haruki had said, when I could run Keen 4 in a window, I was already happy. So big up to the DOSBox developers as well. Anyway, this was just a fun little thought experiment that the peeps on my Discord decided to see through to its logical conclusion. And if you want to go deep diving with them on future excursions through the digital BDSM dungeons, there's a link to join my Discord in the video description. So anyway, that's it for now. Have fun, take care, I'll see you around the Chrono Stream. Bye!